Welcome back, everyone, to the cigar smoke-filled back room. I am Doug with Tusk Consulting. TuskConsulting@gmail.com. TuskConsulting@gmail.com. If you are a pro-gun Republican, drop me a line at that email, and we'll see if we can help you. If you are not a pro-gun Republican, then I hope your political career self-destructs like a Hezbollah pager. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than our normal video series. Today we're going to be discussing the October 1st vice presidential debate between United States Senator J.D. Vance and Governor Tim Walz. Before we get too far into the video, our cigar of the day is a Club Mareva. A buddy of mine gave me this. And the bottle of the day is a Maker's Mark, one of their wood finishing series. This is the Heart Release. And today we're having it as a cocktail. This is an old-fashioned, my favorite cocktail. Anyhow, the October 1st vice presidential debate. This is the only debate that is going to occur between the vice presidential contenders. And like every other debate I've discussed before, you've seen this one, debates are theater, not substance. Okay? Could we go through line by line and analyze every question and every answer and blah, blah, blah? Of course we could. But it's not really the point. That's not what we're here for. This is not an academic debate. This is not a high school debate. There's no judges out there keeping score. It's televised to the American public. It is a political debate. It is theater. Do the issues matter? Of course the issues matter. Your command of the issues matter. How you present your arguments matter. The way you look matters. The way you talk matters. There's so much more to it than an academic debate. It is a political debate, which is, again, theater, not substance. So you may have tuned in to see who I think won. Did J.D. Vance win? Did Tim Walz win? And of course, the answer here is that Trump won. Now, why do I say Trump won? Trump wasn't on the debate stage after all, right? Look, this was significantly more important, this vice presidential debate, to the Republican slate than it was to the Democrat slate. Why do I say that? Because Donald Trump can only serve one more term. He's already been president once. He can only serve one more term. J.D. Vance, being only 40 years old, youngest running mate in history, I think, is definitely a succession-style pick, right? He's a lot younger than Donald Trump. He's a lot younger than Tim Walz. If, heaven forbid, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz win this thing, Tim Walz theoretically is going to be vice president for 8 years. And it should be noted he's not the youngest cat either. And 8 years from now, he's not going to make it closer to his prime. But J.D. Vance can only be Donald Trump's vice president for 4 years, a single term. And maybe after that, he'll want to run on his own. Who knows? But the point is, 4 years from now, he'll be closer to his prime, at least from a political standpoint, than anybody else we're discussing. And so it was very important for America to see what kind of a national level presidential caliber figure J.D. Vance was. It was important to see what kind of a pick Donald Trump had made. And in fact, Donald Trump won this debate because J.D. Vance showed that he is up to the challenge. He can handle himself. He was articulate. He was intelligent. He thought on his feet. He looked good. He, mostly was looking at the camera. He didn't get drawn into stupid debate, tit for tat garbage. He did a good job. And when it came, like the moderators, who are kind of a mixed bag this time, tried to, get him to say bad stuff about Trump. Brought up past comments and blah, 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 blah. JD didn't take the bait on any of that. Instead, JD was a team player, which is really important, okay? You want people that aren't going to backstab you. And JD's not that kind of guy. He did a good job of defending his running mate. He actually, at one point said, I'm going to defend my running mate a little bit here. He did a good job of that. He showed that he belonged on the ticket. He showed he was up to the challenge. He did better than Tim Walz did, absolutely. Tim Walz didn't make any, huge, crucifyingly terrible mistake that would, absolutely doom his side. He made some whoopsies. Was the one where he said, I've made friends with lots of school shooters. Oh boy, those slips of the tongue are awful tough there, Tim. But the point is, again, back to JD, which, again, this debate was much more important for JD than it was for Tim. JD did a good job of getting connected to the voters. He did. He demonstrated his, humble roots. He talked about the things that people care about. He, connected. And that's really important, again, in this theater, not substance kind of environment that we find ourselves with a political debate. In fact, it's not that, aside from a few obvious miscues with his speaking ability, it's not that Tim Walz did badly. In fact, one could argue that Tim Walz, at least for the Democrats anyway, which, look, I'm a pro-gun Republican, but compared to Kamala Harris, Tim Walz actually, is probably a more palatable candidate to a lot of people after watching this debate than what they've, their opinion of Kamala Harris. Which brings us way back to the first debate this cycle between Trump and Biden. And of course, in that debate, Biden famously imploded and doomed his political career at that moment where look, he was terrible. It was just terrible. And we asked a very important question after that debate, and that question was, who after Biden? And apparently the answer, the DNC in cigar smoke-filled maybe vape-filled back rooms. I don't know what they have, but regardless, they got some kind of back room. They chose Kamala Harris. Now, the problem with that is that the other possible contenders never had a chance to run. It was Biden, Biden, Biden. He's the incumbent. Nobody can touch him. Nobody's allowed to do anything. They kept RFK Jr. out of the race. And then, all of a sudden, poof, Biden's vanishing, and poof, here's Kamala Harris, because they said so. Guys like Tim Walz never got the opportunity to run. They never got the opportunity to make their case to the American people, or Gavin Newsom, or Gretchen Whitmer, or, your favorite Democrat du jour. They never had the opportunity to campaign in a primary for an open race and show why they'd be a better candidate. And I think this is playing out right now when we look at, again, you know how I feel about the polls, but when you look at the polling, Kamala Harris is not doing well here in 2024 as compared to Biden was doing in 2020. In fact, a lot of the polls show Donald Trump doing better than he did even in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. One wonders what would have happened if the Democrats would have just been honest and said, old Scranton Joe has lost a step. And like a year ago, they could, Joe's just not going to run again. I mean, he'll finish out his term, but he's not going to run again. Let's have an open, democratic process where anybody that wants to run can put their ideas out there and appeal to our electorate and see who comes up with the strongest coalition of Democrat support to win the primary process and become the nominee. That whole democracy thing they keep talking about. They didn't do that, did they? Oh, no. They anointed somebody that you didn't have a say in. But, they call us a threat to democracy, right? Well, and Tim Walz did a lot of this garbage tonight, too. Where he, alleged that, Donald Trump is going to imprison his political opponents. The only people trying to imprison a political opponent is literally the Biden-Harris administration. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. But I digress. The fact is, the Democrat primary voters had no say. Oh, all the superdelegates, they got to choose, the people that are better than you, just ask them. The elitists, the coastal liberals, the trust fund babies and the, academics, the elites of the professorial class. They had their say, but you didn't have yours. Hey, what's a few million primary voters compared to the opinions of the Democrat elite? Where they put their pinky finger out while they, drink their brandy, yes. But that's all right. It is what it is. And now the Democrats are suffering with a poor candidate. Tim Walz might have even done better than Kamala. But she's not doing well. And she's not doing well in part because she wasn't tested and vetted in a primary. If she'd have won the primary, she'd probably be a better candidate today. But she's not, because she didn't. And instead, the Democrats passed over lots of other potentially better candidates and saddled themselves with this horrible candidate that's probably going to lose to Donald Trump by a bigger margin than any Democrat has lost by since Michael Dukakis. And I, as a pro-gun Republican, am going to thoroughly enjoy that result. If you're a loyal Democrat, you probably won't enjoy that result. But the people you should be mad at are the leaders of your own party. But back to the debate. Again, I digress. This debate, again, was not, really huge on particular issues or particular back and forth. It was mostly the usual talking points. They were given their prepared lines and prepared remarks. Yeah, there was some decent back and forth a couple times, but mostly that wasn't the case. Mostly it was stuff that they had prepared, stuff they knew what to say, things that they practiced in debate prep and so forth. And that's cool. I do want to point out some things that were not brought up. Well, a lot of things got brought up. A lot of even current events got brought up. The hurricane came up, the Middle East, devolving into, a disaster. That came up. But notice what didn't come up? Let's see. Oh yeah, the dock workers strike. Maine to Texas. Longshoremen on strike. Not a peep. Not a peep. This is a huge deal. This has the potential to have profound economic impact. Profound. Could cause shortages, etc. And yet they didn't talk. The moderators didn't bring it up at all. And honestly, I kind of wish JD would have brought it up, but whatever. But the moderators didn't bring it up. This is a massive story. Massive story. Why did they bring it up? Because the mainstream media wants to pretend it's not happening. Okay? Because it is yet another example, another log on the fire that the Biden-Harris administration does not know what they're talking about. They does not know how to handle things. And I dare say the big issue for the longshoremen is inflation. They argue that their pay is not kept up with inflation. And in related news, water is slightly wet. Of course it hasn't kept up with inflation. Inflation's gone nuts. And this isn't the only example of it. The machinists union, Boeing, they wanted a lot more than they were getting because inflation. It's not unique to the dock workers, but it's another example of how the Biden-Harris policies have caused economic problems that are frankly just not solvable with the current leadership. They didn't bring that up, did they? They also didn't bring up Ukraine. That's weird. But I guess you can't cover everything. But again, mostly the usual talking points. So again, this debate was all about theater and not substance. It was the usual. I like this one too much. I have to show it. Theater, not substance. It was the usual talking points. And yes, even though he wasn't on the stage, Donald Trump did win because he saw his running mate, his very young but very qualified and very articulate running mate, hold his own and demonstrate that he belongs at the national level of the political discourse and is a valid succession pick. So, with that, again, I am Doug with Tusk Consulting, tuskconsulting@gmail.com, tuskconsulting@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody. See you the next one.